Success is a pretty abstract notion. For a football player, it could mean the goals they have scored. For me, it could be my career. What about a business? Hi, this is Sarah from User Guiding, and the answer you're looking for is growth. But growth does not necessarily equal success, and success does not necessarily equal growth. There are some other complex mechanisms that go into that calculation, and today we're talking exactly about that. Let's talk about the rule of 40, a important indicator of success for SaaS businesses, and here we go. So, what is the rule of 40? The rule of 40 is basically a high-level metric for SaaS businesses that's been growing increasingly popular with venture capital and growth equity realms. It is basically associated with growth rate and profit margin, and the idea behind it is that if the combination of your growth rate and profit margin goes over 40%, that means your business is viable and is on the right track to become a mature business. Now you know what the rule of 40 is, but you don't know what it came to be. So let's roll back to 2015, which is the time when everyone kind of came across the term online on Brad Feld's personal blog, where he mentioned that he has heard some investors talk about the rule of thumb. But obviously he wasn't the original coiner of the term. It was some venture capitalists that was using the metric to assess the profitability of small, fast-growing businesses. And it kind of started to establish from there. Obviously, there was some sort of controversies and discussions on what criteria to use for profitability and growth. In fact, some analysts actually discussed that the profitability criteria for the original metric was not correct. I mean, they wanted to use EBITDA, they wanted to use EBIT, they wanted to use net growth for growth rate, but essentially today, whatever you use for the rule of 40, what does not change is the fact that it is a very reliable metric to assess your business's health and attractiveness. Now, when I say the rule of 40 is a really good rule of thumb, I am not necessarily meaning that it is or should be the go-to metric for assessing the success of a business, but for some it can be. So now let's talk about why I think the rule of 40 is very important and effective. First of all, the rule of 40 is a metric that lets you speak the investor's language. You can go on an investors meeting and talk about how you've grown year over year and how customer retention's been great lately, but it won't necessarily come through to them. What you actually should be putting on the table is your growth plus your profitability, and that is the exact definition of the rule of 40. If you can show them that you are over that mark, that's just exactly talking the language of the investors. The second reason why I think the rule of 40 is really important is because it tends to create a sense of balance between growth and profit. Now, most SaaS businesses tend to tip over to one side of the scale when it's growth and profit, but we should realize that we actually shouldn't be choosing one or the other, because a balance between the two means that sustainability is coming and your business is going to last for a longer term. And sure, you're not going to be getting a lot of money at first, you're not going to be growing very fast, but that means just that you are going to be sustainable and you will still have your job in the long term. You won't be failing your business. And the third reason why I think the rule of 40 is great for any business in SaaS is because it gives businesses a sense of seriousness in a competitive market. If your business has a problem, and most SaaS businesses tend to have a problem at least once, what you want to do is to first recognize the problem. If you can see the problem, you can solve it. So the rule of 40, with its combination of the most important two metrics, most important two criteria in assessing your business's health gives you the opportunity to become more disciplined and stay serious in the competitive market, whatever your size or market fit is. So now that you're into it, let's take a look at how you can work out the Rule of 40. As I said before, it has a basic benchmark of about 40%. And if you're below it, you're probably not a big company. You are either a very small company or a startup, which means that you might not be eligible for the metric yet. If you don't have a very established team structure in your company yet, you might not want to pick up the Rule of 40 yet. But if you do, if you think that your business is actually pretty established and you are below 40%, you just might want to look into that. If your calculations show that you are on the 40% mark, that means, well, you are an eligible business for the Rule of 40. You've hit it, you're doing great, and you should keep going. But if you are actually above 40-45%, that means congratulations, you are a viable business that is mature enough to be calculating the Rule of 40. But don't just stop there, because you should also keep an eye on the balance between profitability and growth. If the balance is off, you just might go down. It might be a fluke, it might be short-term success. Just watch out for it. So while we're at it, let's talk about how you can figure out growth rate and profit margin as well. For growth rate, all you have to do is decide on a time period, whether it is ARR or MRR. And what you do is you take the value at the end of the period, subtract the value at the start of the period, and divide it by the start value again, and then you have your growth rate. Calculating the profit margin is actually even easier. All you have to do is make a decision. You can choose to take net dollar, free cash flow, EBITDA, but the most popular one is definitely EBITDA, which is an acronym for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So it's all up to you, but let me just tell you, the popular one is definitely EBITDA. Now, I just might have confused you a little, because I just said that not everyone should be calculating the Rule of 40. Then who should be calculating the Rule of 40, and when is it appropriate for you to calculate the Rule of 40? The main thing to focus on is whether you are a mature business or not. There are certain criteria, and if they are not met, you might not be a mature business. But what defines a mature business? So according to Brett Feld, a mature business is one that has hit 1 million MRR, but that still might not be quite enough if you don't have certain structures in your business. So if you don't have a clearly established team structure in your business, for example, customer success team, the sales team, marketing team, customer support team, if they're not like all separated and functioning perfectly, you just might not be up for calculating the Rule of 40. Now you know what the Rule of 40 is and how you can calculate it. What you also know is that I said that the Rule of 40 is all about balancing profit and growth. But not everyone thinks so. While some big ballers agree with me, some others don't necessarily agree with me. So now let's take a look at how you can go over and beyond with the Rule of 40. Some believe that exceptional growth does the trick. In fact, 1/3 of all firms that outperform the Rule of 40 for over 5 years do so by sales growth of over 30%. Splunk, Vix, and Workday are among these, and while they try to keep a moderate profitability, they invest in hypergrowth to create an enormous installed base, displace legacy vendors, and achieve the status of a platform. Some others like me think that it's all a matter of balance. In fact, half of the companies that outperform the Rule of 40 regularly do so with sales increases of 10 to 30%. VMware, Adobe, Salesforce are among these. While they are focusing on growth and profitability at the same time with kind of high prices. They also invest in market authority by putting the money right where it belongs, in different areas, in different markets. You can especially see this with whatever Salesforce does with their different hubs of business on the market. So it just might be a matter of balance if Salesforce and Adobe says so. And some others choose profit for life. We've discovered that 18% of businesses that beat the rule of 40 do so with sales growth below 10%. Among these companies are Oracle, SAP, Trend Micro, and they have big, lucrative flagship businesses. When the case is like that for them, they most likely focus on more opportunities to actually make profit. They make it a priority to exact pricing, go for upgrades, go for different markets. So it's all a matter of profit for some. Now that was how other businesses outperform the rule of 40. Let's talk about how you can outperform it. And let me just say this once, it is impossible to beat the rule of 40 on a stable, long-term basis. What you can do is just try to catch up with it for as long as you can, because all businesses have their own profitability and growth challenges, from the product itself, the market fit, the market strategy, the competitors. So what you can do is just basically stick with some methods you come up with yourself, or traditional methods just like the ones I'm about to tell you. The first thing you want to do is to make sure that you focus on your already installed foundation. A business's most important asset is, you guessed it, the customers. And what I love to say all the time is that customer retention is above probably all else, because you can always acquire new customers, but you cannot possibly take back a customer that has churned away. You probably can, but it's hard. So what you want to do is focus on not necessarily hunting new customers, but farming the ones you had already for quantitative and qualitative data that will show you how you can actually invest in more growth and profit that'll eventually increase your rule of 40 score. The second thing you want to make sure runs smoothly is engineering and the productivity that goes into engineering, because focusing on the rule of 40 essentially means that you will be growing more and more, and that means there is an extra burden that will be put on your engineering team, because they will be trying to come up with new features, implementing them while also maintaining what is already at hand. So what matters here the most is that you define goals very strictly and you try to achieve them as flexibly as possible. This is the only way to preserve growth that is balanced out with profit as well. The third thing you want to make sure is that the operations performance is high. So the biggest problem in the face of productivity is definitely complexity, and as new customers, countries, and products are introduced into the market mix, there comes more and more different processes and structures. To make sure you don't get affected negatively by all that, what you gotta do is streamline and integrate properly. So by doing this, you will be getting rid of whatever is in the way of your growth and profitability and the possible balance between the two. So to wrap it all up, basically, the rule of 40 is a pretty easy KPI. What's not so easy, however, is to decide whether your business is up for the KPI or not. What's also not so easy is to determine whether you want to profit like Oracle does or hypergrow like Wix does. Whatever you do, just make sure that you stay on top of that 40% mark, and there comes your investors. This was Sarah from User Guiding. See you next time.